Welcome to Trial Costa Rica. I'm Adam Baker. This is your weekly video series that discusses everything travel, relocation, inspiration, and living in Costa Rica. So know before you go. Please like if you're enjoying this video series. Of course, don't forget to hit subscribe so that you never miss out on one of our weekly episodes. And if you have any questions for us, let me know in the comments box below and I'll get straight back to you. This week's guest is Taracabatingan. Tara, originally from Maine, came over nearly 30 years ago in 1992 to learn Spanish. And guess what? She's been here ever since. Good morning, Tara. How are you?
Good morning, Adam. Doing great. How are you?
I'm very good this morning. It's a lovely sunny San Jose morning. It looks really sunny behind you as well. Whereabouts are you located?
I'm actually in the mountains of Heredia, so a bit north of San Jose, at about 1,500 meters. So it's a little cooler up here, but we also have beautiful sunny mornings in June. Probably get some rain in the afternoon. Yeah.
Isn't it true that most people, when they think about Costa Rica, that it can be quite easy to forget that there's this beautiful mountain range all the way down the heart of the country that's literally 50 meters, 4,000 feet high, nice cool weather.
Yeah. If you like the cooler weather, then Heredia is nice. The mountains are beautiful.
It's my go-to place. I always go up towards Poas whenever I can if I'm escaping. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Drops. It's for me. It's
Yeah, it stays green year round up here.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned in my introduction, you came over to Costa Rica in 1992. So you've seen a lot. I would love to know, to get us kicked off today in this conversation, tell me a bit more how it happened for you. How did you come to Costa Rica? What was it like in the early 90s? What's your story?
Sure. Yeah, I came to Costa Rica. I was 20 years old. I came to learn Spanish and just ended up traveling, and I got a nanny job. So that I didn't want to turn it down. So it was a good way to stay. And I didn't know that I was going to be staying for 29 plus years at the time, but it's ended up being, I feel, the right decision for me.
Yeah. That's super interesting. 1992. So you came down, much like Justin, who I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, again to learn Spanish. I came over in 2006 to do a conservation project with my sister, and like you, just decided to stay. What was the difference in the early 90s as to where we are now, nearly 30 years?
So much has changed. I mean, I don't think there was a mall. There wasn't a mall in Costa Rica when I first got here. So it did seem pretty foreign, but I was open to that. I grew up in Maine, where it's quite cold and, has the four seasons, and of course is beautiful in summer. But I have a Filipino father, so we did trips to the Philippines when I was a kid. And I always thought, okay, I think I'm going to end up living someplace tropical. I don't know where, but I do like the weather and just the low-key vibe and much less pressure. I do think Costa Rica has changed a lot. Bigger companies have moved in, trained a different kind of workforce here than there was in 92. More tech, of course. There wasn't much of that going on in 92. The roads were not as good in 92. Much harder to get from place to place. It took quite a bit longer to get to the beach from the Central Valley. And now it's, there are highways and all the conveniences, I guess, that you would miss from the US that I kind of missed in the early days, but I was willing to trade that off for a more relaxed lifestyle.
Gotcha. Do you find it quite funny that people still complain about the roads? And then even though you're saying obviously they're much better, they're still the classic, Costa Rica roads are terrible. But in 92, I can imagine it was even worse.
Yeah. I mean, now you see them out fixing there's a lot of road work still going on, of course, but it's changed from like spray painting a pothole to actually filling it up and that kind of thing. So
was there any particular reason you chose Costa Rica to learn Spanish? as opposed to all the other, Spanish speaking countries
Yeah.
in South
It
America?
just it seemed like at that age, it seemed like the safer choice as far as other Central American countries. I knew they didn't have an army, which was appealing to me. It seemed like, oh, you can have the mountains, you can do all kinds of water sports. Um, the nature was what appealed to me, and the safety, I would say.
Okay, and are those things the key things that kept you? Because in 1992, when tourism was slowly up and coming and ecotourism was just beginning, like you
Mhm.
said, it wasn't big tech,
Mhm.
didn't have the infrastructure that it has nearly 30 years.
Exactly.
I'm guessing it was the
Mhm.
nature, the tropical environment that kept you here and enjoying like the Pura Vida. I'm guessing was even more Pura Vida.
The Pura Vida was very Pura Vida, and I was coming from, at that time, San Francisco, where it
Okay.
just felt a more kind of, a high pressure lifestyle, uh, you know, not as much easygoing. You knew, I like the lack of knowing how the day was going to unfold, and
Yeah,
I think it does take a person that's open to that and has patience for rolling with whatever is kind of happening, and it still has that.
for sure. What
Mhm.
surprised you over 30 years that perhaps when you came in the early 90s that you didn't think was necessarily going to become developed? Or was there any big surprises that you've seen in terms of growth here?
Um, well, like I said, there are a lot more conveniences. But really the mentality, I think, has not changed a ton in the way that when I go back to the States,
Yeah,
maybe if the States had stayed as it was in the 90s, there wouldn't be so much of a gap. But I feel like it's only become more high pressured, more work focused, and of course we all have to work and we all have to earn our living, but I do feel like I have a life outside of that I'm really able to pursue too, and that you don't need a lot of money to enjoy the things that are available here.
for sure, for sure. What was it,
Hmm.
do you think, that kept you in the mountains of Costa Rica as opposed to going inside the city or, the beach when everybody thinks about retiring or relocating to Costa Rica? I want to be by the sea.
Right.
So why did you choose
Right.
the location you're at?
Well, my I had married a Costa Rican man and had children, so we were at that time more concerned about, well, our jobs were in this area, and then school for the kids. I just
Wow.
felt like there were a lot more options in the Central Valley than there were at the beach. I know that's changed now, and I know there are some very good schools
Yeah,
in beach areas, and I think of myself as a beach person, and I love to go to the beach, but I am able to do that from here
yeah.
and still, it's just, I do like to wear a sweater and not be so sweaty.
I love it.
So
I'm in a
yeah.
minority. I'm totally with you. I love the cool weather.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
pretty much could only live in San Jose, and I love where you live. The sweater you're wearing now with the blue sky. It's such a wonderful mix. And
Mhm.
like you say, you have the advantage of going to the beach, being 3 hours or 1 hour from the Central Pacific when you're in San Jose or the Central
Yeah.
Valley region, right?
Yeah, and close, fairly close to the Caribbean too. So you have the two options. And I love both sides of the country. Yeah. Both sides of the Pacific and the Atlantic.
Yeah, yeah. Smack bang in the middle
Hmm.
makes it good to travel everywhere. What was it like raising your kids? In
Um, I thought it was wonderful because I didn't have the pressures of the cultural pressures. I think, that you get if you're brought up in a country and raised a certain way, then that's kind of how you fall into raising your children. And here I felt like I had a bit more freedom to just be the kind of mom that I wanted to be and raise my kids that I wanted to without judgment, being a
yeah,
foreigner. Um, I wasn't really expected to conform to all the cultural expectations of Costa Rica. And then I didn't have to raise them, with everyone's approval in the States either. So they got a lot of contact with nature. They're both, my daughter's an agricultural engineer now, and my son is studying to be one. So
fantastic.
I think growing up in Costa Rica had a lot to do with that. Just an appreciation for whole foods and nature and that kind of freedom. And they got a great education. They went to a European school,
Yeah,
so they could study anywhere really, and they've chosen to stay here.
that's
So
a
I think it was good.
yeah, that's a wonderful endorsement of Costa Rica. And I think, I guess, would you say that obviously the states are massive, specifically the 50
Right.
of them, it's a very large country, but those kind of endorsements and that kind of freedom and
Hmm.
knowledge and education that they have regarding the climate and the wonderful jobs they have, that's probably, would you say it's very difficult, for many young families or kids looking to grow up in the states? It sounds like they have an advantage in that sense. It sounds like you consider it an advantage growing up
I
here.
consider it an advantage, and I think they do too, because they were exposed to both cultures. We would go back and visit, and they had Costa Rican family here. And Costa Ricans, even if I hadn't had a Costa Rican husband, and had them grow up around his family, Costa Ricans are super warm and want to be, get to know you. So they're definitely have both cultures in them.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. I have a question that was asking about those questions, the both cultures. Like you've explained a little bit about the quality of life in Costa Rica. How
Hmm.
does it differ? Is there anything you specifically miss about the US that you've brought back here, or you're happy with the lifestyle here?
I do miss some of the conveniences. Some things are a bit easier to do in the States, um that don't take as much time as they do here, like
Yeah.
renewing your driver's license, maybe that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Um and I am up in the mountains, so I'm 15 minutes really from a great supermarket, lots of restaurant options, but I'm in the country.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's hard to say. I don't know where I would be living if I was living in the States, but yeah, I guess it is, you do have to kind of accept that things aren't quite as smoothly run and convenient here.
Was that was
But
that
once you,
was
Mhm.
that was that an easy process for you? Because I remember learning about the Pura Vida lifestyle, the patience that comes with living in Costa
Mhm.
Rica. For me, it took me quite a while, years to get used to it. And I would say over the last 10
Mhm.
years, I've got quite patient and a little bit more relaxed. Whilst there's still
Mhm.
some things, the famous queuing in the banks, any
Mhm.
paperwork takes forever. Was that
Right.
was that easy for you in your early 20s to get used to, or is it just? Do you think it's just dependent on your personality?
I think it helped that I was young in my case, just because that was pretty much the start of my adult life. So that made it easier for me, I think. But I do think things have gotten easier. We don't necessarily need to go into the bank as much.
Yeah.
Everything's changed as far as the internet expanding our worlds, and Costa Rica has kept up to a degree with that too.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. Let me swing the topic a
Hmm.
little bit. I'd be very interested to get your opinion about the general cost of living. So, say I was one of your friends back in the States, and they're like, Tara, I'm making the big move. I'm coming down. Everything you say about Costa Rica sounds amazing. What would you say, depending on where you are? Perhaps you're a young mum, or you've got a couple of kids, or you're a couple thinking about moving. What's the average
Hmm.
cost of living that you should budget for? And what about your
Hmm.
outgoings? How does that compare? And has that changed over the last 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, I do own my home, and I don't I don't have a mortgage right now, which is really nice, but property taxes I think are lower here. I don't have I have an electric bill. It's just me in the house now, so I would say it's roughly like $80 a month, and then I have gas for cooking and heating water, so
Nice.
that's probably $60 a month. And then food costs I think are pretty comparable to the US.
Yeah.
Cars are a bit more expensive still. Um, but yeah, I think it's reasonable. And then, I have the ability to grow my own food in my garden, so that helps a lot. And I know I've told you, farmers markets, and that's a
Yeah.
very reasonable way to get great food at a very reasonable price. So
Yeah.
I don't find it to be overwhelmingly expensive. I
That's
don't
one
think
thing we
it's
haven't.
super cheap either. I don't think it's like
Yeah.
Mexico, you
Yeah,
know?
no, you're right. I mean, I agree. I had similar costs. Again, it comes back to the same kind of thing. A lot of people ask, is $2,000 a month reasonable? Should it be 3,000? Can I live on 1,500? It depends entirely on where you're renting, how big your apartment is. If you choose to go to rent 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, or if you
Exactly.
have a mortgage to pay off. But yeah, the groceries, electricity, gas, internet, buying a car
Yeah,
varies a lot. The groceries, like you say, definitely comparable. It depends where you want to shop. I seem it
right.
always comes back to the same thing. If you want to get the imported goods and the treats you have from back home, they're going to cost a little bit more, like out of Mercado supermarket. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about a farmer's market, because in Costa Rica, you can get a ton of fruits, vegetables, and you can come back with 4 or 5 grocery bags and have spent less than
Hmm.
$2. I mean, you can get a lot.
Less than, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can, and that's great. All the things that you need to live healthily
Yeah.
and eat well, you can do that at the farmer's market for the most part. And yeah, spend like $50 a week.
Yeah, it's crazy. Is that something you do every weekend?
I try to, yes.
Yeah. No, nice. Yeah. No, there's one here, but I don't always get up early enough. Costa Ricans, they're all up at the crack of dawn, 5:36.
Yeah.
Nearly wrap up
Yeah.
by around 10 o'clock.
Right.
No, wonderful. I definitely recommend farmers markets. Would
Oh,
you?
and another thing I'll have to say about living in the mountains, I'm not paying for heating and I'm not paying for AC.
Yeah,
So there's none of that, which
that's a
is
good
great.
point. I was talking to Anastasia a few weeks ago, something similar. That was one of the differences that she saw between living in San Jose and then finally going to the beach. I don't have AC
Mm.
here. It does make a difference. I imagine, yeah, the mountains, you're quite fresh
Hmm.
all year round. No, for sure.
Hmm.
I haven't asked anybody yet. What would you say are the top, 3 reasons to retire in Costa Rica? It's a question we get a lot. You've covered obviously the lifestyle, but if I was, later on in life and I'm thinking about coming down,
Yeah.
why would you
You
say
know
it's?
what? I wish my parents would move here, to be honest with you, because it's so, as you age and maintaining a home in the US, that's expensive. It's expensive to pay a gardener. It's expensive to have someone come in and clean.
Yeah,
It's not expensive here, and I can see how if you needed like round the clock care, you could do that pretty on a much lower budget here than you could in the US. And I
yeah,
think that's that's an important thing to think about when you're retiring. I'm already thinking that, like, oh, this is the place to be. I mean, I could easily get someone, and I do have a friend who has a 99-year-old mother here,
wow,
and she has a wonderful woman, yeah, that takes, great care of her, and she's there every day. And even to have someone come in and cook and clean, it's pretty affordable, and that would be outrageously expensive in the US.
yeah. No, I can imagine. That's a,
Mhm.
that's a wonderful little reason. I was just thinking about it. So I can also see my cat walking behind me. She's jumping
Yeah.
action.
She's stealing the
Yeah,
show.
no, try not to make too much.
No, no, she's not.
um, yeah, I'm trying to get my mum over as well to come and visit and to think about an extended stay here, just to kind of feel
Yeah.
what it's like to be here. Do you think the language barrier of speaking Spanish is an issue, or if somebody's worrying about that, how would you say?
Uh-huh.
Is it
I
worth worrying?
mean, I think it's nice to be able to speak the language of the country. I just feel like that's courtesy.
Yeah,
But if, I can also understand people just not being ready, to think about retiring and learning a new language. But it's possible. There are some great language schools here, and a lot of people do speak English here, right?
that's what I was getting to. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard it. Oh, but what if I was going to the bank or I had to deal with something? Like, you can find a lot of good English speakers with the amount of tourism, yeah, expat communities here. I don't
And
think.
it is a country, yeah, where people are happy to speak English with you. I know sometimes people some countries you might go to and they're not going to want to deal with you if
Yeah,
you don't speak the language. But here, people are very eager to use their English too.
for sure. If you had,
Yeah.
so going back a little bit from retiring, if you had a family that's thinking of relocation,
Hmm.
what would be your top tips to them, taking maybe a couple of kids?
I would say each family, that's a really individual thing. Everyone has a different idea of how they want to raise their children. And I think Costa Rica does attract people that are looking to have a different experience with their kids. And there are a lot of options here, just as far as schooling, and then homeschooling, of course, is an option. There are little private schools too.
Yeah,
If you're looking for like a Waldorf type experience, Montessori, something like that, there are those options here. And some international schools. So they're getting, they're not, I don't feel like their worldview will be negatively affected if you move your kids here and educate them here.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I couldn't agree more. If you weren't living in the mountains, you mentioned you were a beach
Mhm.
person at heart. Where
Mhm.
where would you and your family have been living, do you think? Where's some of the top places for families to move to in Costa Rica?
Families to move to. I would say probably Guanacaste. If you're a beach person and you want a good school for your children,
Yeah.
from what I've heard, Guanacaste is the area that is more organized as far as good international type schools.
Yeah, and quite close by. I mean, you can be close to the beach. Liberia is pretty much an
Right.
hour away from anywhere on the main coastal areas, right? And it's quite hot.
Correct.
You get nice weather pretty much all year round, less rainfall in the green season.
Right, right. And I think Manuel Antonio is another beach destination that has some good schools too. So that's the
Yeah.
Central Pacific Coast. Yeah.
Where do you like to take your family to? Say you had one weekend to go away with. Obviously, you've been working in travel with Costa Rican
Mhm.
vacations for a long time now. When you get a trip to one of your favorite hotels, where is that?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. That's a hard question. I mean, I love the Caribbean. That's a really unique and beautiful part of the country. I love the mountain areas, like going to the Cerro de la Muerte, that like the Santos area, that's like
Yeah, yeah.
coffee country. Just so much diversity, really. I haven't even hit all the spots that I want to in all my time here, but
Oh well, that says a lot
just
about how much, yeah,
exploring
about how much there is in
about
Costa
how
Rica.
much there's to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Cat's trying to come up here. I have one penultimate question before wrapping up. We were talking a little
Okay.
bit about the Pura Vida lifestyle. Can you
Mhm.
define what Pura Vida lifestyle is?
Mm, I think it's very accepting, just kind of like, okay, you're doing your thing. We'll leave you alone. Just kind of like go with the flow.
Yeah.
Every day is going to be a little bit different. Um, yeah, to me, that's what it is. What about you? What do you see as the
It's
Pura
a good
Vida
question.
lifestyle?
I was on a podcast a while ago with Casey about Let's Talk Tourism, and it's one of his questions at the end to go, what is Pura Vida? Um,
Hmm.
yeah. For me, I think it's like a certain way of being, because
Yeah.
it's like pure life. It can mean hello, goodbye, everything's good, how's it going? It's
Hmm.
quite an amazing sentiment. But yeah, I think it's just it will be okay. Everything's good. Be happy. Positive vibes in
Hmm.
general.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think
Just and don't you think it's really just accepting of like
yeah,
whatever?
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've visited any other countries or cultures where there's a word to summarize that. I'm sure there
Hmm.
probably is. I think there was one in Hawaii. I heard a long time ago, but yeah, I'd never really experienced anything like it. And I think it's funny because it can go both ways. The negative side is bloody pura vida,
Let's
it
get this
takes
done.
too long,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that's very typical of us foreigners coming in, living here, and then looking at that, going, with the
Yeah.
massively developed nation where everything is rush, 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 and you don't get to kind of calm down slightly.
But yeah. But you know what? I do think you get more. We talk about it as far as like being patient, but I think there are great young professional architects and builders and that kind of thing for people that are thinking of coming down and retiring.
Yeah,
those services are good, and the medical services are very personalized too. I mean, you have contact with if you do need medical care, there are great doctors here,
Yep.
great clinics. And I recently had to have surgery, or last year I had to have a surgery, and my mom came down to help me out. She's a retired nurse, my dad's a retired doctor, and just looking at the medical care, they're very impressed with it, and I think they feel like my dad also recently had a heart attack in the States and was in the hospital that he practiced at, and he was pretty frustrated with the care that he got there. And
Wow.
I'm happy I'm here if I need anything, to be honest with you.
Well, that's really good to hear. I'm glad he's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
topic I haven't particularly covered, but we do get asked, medical services. Some of the
They're
private
great.
hospitals, as well as the National Health Service here, is pretty
Hmm.
fantastic. I myself had a surgery, a sporting injury on my knee, that in a
Hmm.
private hospital cost me around $8,000 US. The
Hmm.
same surgery without insurance is 35 to 50,000 in the US as well. So as a Brit,
Yeah.
our National Health Service, I was just mind blown. And it is, I had excellent
Yeah.
treatment and it was really, really good. So yeah, no,
Excellent. Yeah.
that's a very good point. The last question I like to
Hmm.
ask everybody before wrapping up is, what, if anything, do you wish you could tell yourself just before you left in 1992? So just to prepare a young Tara for Costa
Fasten your seatbelt. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. No,
Yeah,
just
no,
kidding.
you're
No.
still young.
Well, yeah. um, but it'll all be fine,
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that's just to my younger self anywhere, I guess.
yeah,
But yeah, I think, you're not gonna regret this is probably what I would tell myself, and just embrace it and enjoy it.
yeah, yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So
Well, that's good to hear. There was no one specific thing you'd be like, oh, I wish I knew that.
maybe come with money and buy property in 92. That would be, I don't think
Yeah,
that was an option, but that would have been a great idea.
I can imagine. Yeah, yeah, with the
Yeah.
boom. No, it's like the old Bitcoin. Some of the different places, yeah, nearly 30 years ago, where there wasn't even a road, and now there's malls and cinemas and car dealerships.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and I've only been here 15 years, nearly half that time, but it's come along a long way. Well, Tara, thank you
Hmm.
very much for speaking to us. It's
Thank you.
fantastic. It's great to see a smile on your face. And I mean, what better endorsement is it for nearly spending 30 years down here and raising a family? I think that's a wonderful endorsement of Costa Rica. I'm going to put
Yeah.
all your contact details below. So if anybody has any questions for you directly, they can reach out to you
Perfect.
or us on the Trial Costa Rica channel. Tara, thank you very much
Sure.
for joining us, and hopefully catch up again with you in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks,
Fantastic.
everyone. Have a great day. Pura Vida.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Tara. Some fantastic information. And didn't it look beautiful where she was up there in the mountains? If you have any questions for myself or Tara, you can reach out to us directly in the comments box below. And as always, please don't forget to hit subscribe to stay in touch so that you never miss a weekly episode of Trial Costa Rica. So for myself, Adam Baker, see you guys next week.